Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Flying Cat Marketing interview series. Today I have Adam Harris, who is the CEO of Cloudbeds, a property management software with over 600 employees all around the world. And today we're going to be talking about virtualizing human connection, how to grow a remote team of over 600 people through a Series D and more, and maintaining a super strong culture. Hi, Adam. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Exciting to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to talk to you about all of this because, well, I'm also building a remote team. So really it's a self egotistical reason because I want to learn from you about building a big team and keeping the strong culture. Tell me a little bit about the Cloudbed story. The culture was like at the beginning and when things started changing really. And I imagine at some point it was out of your hands and started becoming its own living entity.
If we go back to 2012, when we first had the napkin idea, there was a few of us, and there was the original team, had this concept of transitioning from what we were doing before, and like yourself and your company that's doing sort of consultative work or service offerings and digital marketing and things like that. We were doing some of that and a little bit of technical consulting in the San Diego market. And most of us and our team was already remote, right? So we had people in different parts of the world that were doing different capacities. We had a designer in Estonia, and we had engineers in Ukraine, engineers in Brazil, and a hodgepodge of different people from different walks of life as well as different places. And what was fun is when we brought this original team together, a lot of the sort of similar characteristics that we have today were present, right? So we communicated via chat, right? That was one of our mechanisms. And at that time it was Google Chat. Now it's, gone into Slack and evolved. We were using lots and lots of video. Typically that was Skype then, and now that's become Zoom. And so this sort of asynchronous planning was really how we sort of built the early days. And that's just evolved with new technology and new processes. But the original story was both Rich and I were traveling in the world. I've been to 57 different countries. He's been to a huge number as well. And we both kind of took two different trips. I was in Vietnam and he was in southern Brazil. And those sort of marked this sort of ideation around why do small independent property owners not have the same democratization of technology access? Why has the great tech that the Marriotts of the world hasn't trickled down to some effect to these smaller independent operators? And very much the biggest ad budgets are typically owned by the biggest companies. They've got the most sophisticated tools. So what we found was, why not build a lot of the sort of the fundamentals of what a property owner needs and then work our way up? So we'll start at the bottom. We'll work with the long tail property types. That's what we call these small independents. And over time, we just built more and more technology. But from a remote culture and the way we manage people was very much the same. It just was a little bit more manual back then, because a lot of the tech that we have, even in the pandemic alone, was a huge catalyst to further remote capability amongst service providers and technology vendors. It's been the same. It really hasn't evolved. Just the way we police it and the way we monitor it and the way we keep people connected has definitely changed over time.
Well, how would you define the Cloudbeds culture?
So I call it a community. I really like that term. We maybe when we were a little bit earlier, it was much more familiar in the sense that each sort of were this tight-knit family and everyone knew what was going on in everyone's lives. I haven't met 88% of our staff, and that's also because we've grown so rapidly. And the other scary figure, and it's just total common sense, but as we scale to 2,000 employees over the next few years, the new majority will be new people, new faces that I will have never met in person. It will all be virtual. So taking that and bringing them and indoctrinating them into this sort of community of our ways is going to take what we talk about as lore that gets passed down through the different phases of company to writing it into like publications. And so taking intranets and this is how we hire, this is what we look for, this is the process. So it all becomes less like verbal to much more very tightly woven ways. That's also a great way of policing your culture over time. And it's not meant to be stricter. it's meant to be more consistent. And I think that's something that we've learned through each stage. You asked me a question earlier, what was the sort of impetus to new change? And it would have been our earliest financing infusions. Every time we got more money, it gave us more team members. And so we went from 3 people originally to 8 people. That's a big sizable number jump, but then 8 went to 40, right? That's a huge jump in staff. And then went 40 to 160. Like that's a massive injection of new folks. And so each step of the way, we were just trying to tweak and perfect the model a little bit, but the fundamentals were always the same and haven't changed one bit.
So the people at CloudBeds, you've mentioned last time that we spoke that they're just really fired up about what they're doing, that they're feeling aligned with their work every single day. How do you get that? How do you get that type of employee engagement in a big software company like yours?
Well, look, your number one asset is going to be your people. If you're a technology company or a service provider, a human has to build something or provide that service. And so when I think about that greatest asset, you better take care of it. You better develop it. You better, give it things that lead to additional incentive. And I recently read a great book that just talks about how to build great teams. And what's interesting is they had this sort of concept of the jackass, right? You don't want to surround yourself by jackasses or assholes. That's not good. Life's too short to work with assholes. So I don't know if I can even say that, but whatever, I'm going to say it anyway. So at the end of the day, what they talked about is like surrounding yourself with hungry people. Makes sense, right? You want people who are motivated to get out of bed every day and work really hard. The second thing is you want people who are incredibly smart, not only smart from the perspective of understanding their job duties, but also smart on how they interact with people.
Mm-hmm.
And then third is humble, just like good human beings that understand their own self-worth, but also aren't so egotistical that you're dealing with an inflated ego that you're always having to massage. So if you can surround yourselves with these really smart people with great emotional IQ, great hunger, and then ultimately really good humility, like that's a good foundation of building team members. And when I think about our people asset at CloudBeds, like we pour all of our empathy into that asset. We truly are servant leaders. Like I would do anything for anyone inside this organization. Like I've been woken up at night because a member of the team got in trouble and we wanted to do whatever we could to help out, and we did. And so the purpose of all of this is really about, if you take care of your people asset and they wake up feeling taken care of and feeling like they're energized and they have someone behind them that's a cheerleader trying to make them successful, you would think that they would take care of your customer better, right?
Yeah.
Just naturally, right? And if they're aligned with the why you do things, not the what you do, the why you do things, and they believe in that mission statement, I think you begin to mobilize and create some momentum. And then it's how big of momentum you can gain by connecting all these community members. And so one of the other things that we realized is not only do we need to take care of our staff, we also need to weave systems of people. And I don't like taking the terminology systems of people. It almost feels mathematical, but we all operate differently. I'm an introvert. I am very shy in big crowds. Like I do not feel comfortable. My happy place is in small crowds, and then I become a different human being. And so extroverts love big crowds. They love all those things, and equally you can be successful in many different capacities or fields, irrespective of whether you're an introvert or extrovert. So we try to match people based on their personality traits or what moves them. And so that might be challenged by time zones at time, but we're really trying to think about who's the leader and what their skill sets are, and then trying to surround them with people who optimize everyone. And so we have this belief that if you can create an environment for another person to be successful at, you're checking one of the boxes, and then it's their job to create an environment for others to be successful, and so on. And so then everyone is focused on not only themselves being successful, but also others. And so that creates this community, right? Communities are made up of many different walks of life. Sometimes there's conflict, but conflict can be good, but it becomes this ecosystem. And And like that's the people management I think is the most challenging, but it's the most fun because it's a puzzle. You never necessarily get it right. It evolves a little bit, but when you begin to see it start to glimmer of success, you just want to keep double tapping on that and just evolving it. And so what I've learned is your people org never stops. It always is evolving, and you're constantly like tweaking levers and dials. Like yesterday, we implemented at the company Insight Timer, which is the largest community of meditation and mindfulness. It's curated. It's got like 100,000 curated content, and we gave it away to every employee in the company because people are still challenged by the stresses of the world that I can't control. But if they can take 5 minutes to just unwind and tap out to then ultimately tap back in, like that's a really exciting thing, and I'll pay whatever amount of money that costs to ultimately do that. But it's those little things that we keep doing to infuse a little bit of adrenaline or a little bit of relief to the community, and that's what I love about where it's becoming. And so people are motivated because we are motivated to take care of them. And if we keep doing that, sure, we're going to have to address real challenges like inflation or comp or supply shortages of people, and all that stuff happens. But that's the whack-a-mole of running people. And that's also part of the fun in the game.
It is fun. It is a living experience having an organization full of people. There's the human variable. How do you hire for humility and emotional intelligence? I'm sure that you can sense it, but how do you pass that down to other people who are doing the hiring now? Obviously, other people are doing the hiring now as your organization is scaling so quickly. How can you tell that somebody's going to be humble, that they're emotionally intelligent, that they aren't going to let their ego get in the way of doing a good job?
We talk a lot about culture on calls, and those types of questions are deliberate. Culture means something to me. Like, oh yeah, culture is good. Or wow, like what are some examples of why culture are good? And you can begin to tap into how they see culture as being a business strategy or just something you check the box, right? There are plenty of examples of companies where culture is sort of, hey, we need a culture champion. If it's not the leaders or the top brass, like it's not going to trickle down. It's not going to feel natural. It's going to feel forced.
Yeah.
So you can begin to ask some interviewing questions, and all of us in our interview way begin to double tap on different sort of lenses of culture. And you begin to reveal what ultimately means something. I ask one question on all my interviews. It's the same question I ask every single human being, and it's beginning to be used by other departments too. And I was like, no, that's, if I'm in the interview series, that's my question. You can't take it. But the sort of, I won't reveal it because I don't want anyone to listen and know that it's coming. But what I ultimately am trying to find is what is their true passion in life. If there was an opportunity for them to go do anything every single day for the rest of their lives, what would it be? And the purpose of that question is to reveal whether they're driven by a financial change in their career path or purpose. And humility and that sort of drive comes out based on what they or how they answer it in 10 seconds. Because you'll get someone who's, I want to be like, I would change a job because of X. And if that's somewhat monetary or somewhat career path driven, you're going to get someone who might be over indexing on the hungry side versus like understanding that there's steps in you can accomplish the same thing. So what I would say is we've gotten a little bit smarter about how we orchestrate our questions so that they're picking at these different angles. That is one area that we're going to overhaul in 2022 as well. We're going to spend a lot of time and energy perfecting interviews. We feel like we're good, but we want to be great at it. The feedback is always wonderful. And like, we're just hiring some new VPs. So they're very senior leaders inside CloudBed, and overall the experience that they share backwards is, this is orchestrated. This is very good. Like I understand it. Once I'm like 2 or 3 interviews in, I'm getting what you're doing. And so now we want to make that for all roles and really try to indoctrinate this sort of style, because it's really just a style. There's no right or wrong way of interviewing someone, but there's a style to it. And I think what we want to do is translate not only how we operate as leaders, but also reinforce some of those messages that are incredibly important to us too.
I love that. So you're already starting to get people to bleed blue, as you told me last time we spoke, already from the interview process, because they're already starting to understand
Yep.
how important your culture is to you. Is there any secret? Because at the end of the day, today, there are so many, it's hard to differentiate a PMS right now. There's a lot of them on the market. So one big thing that I think CloudBeds is doing is building this whole culture. The passion that everybody's bringing to the table trickles down into how they're treating the customers at the end of the day, which is going to be a huge differentiator, especially if all the tech is really good. The big differentiator is going to be the service that's coming. So
I was going to say there is a direct correlation to employee health to company health. And the best companies in the world win the most product awards and the most culture awards. And so if you just were looking at your vendors out there, and to your point, there are a lot of PMSs out there. There are a lot of hotel management suites out there. In fact, there's over 450 of them. The way we differentiate ourselves every single day is we're not just a tech vendor, we're also your tech partner, right? We have a team of humans that are driven by this market. They love to travel. They're impassioned travelers when they get to go out there and they're not locked down because of a pandemic. They're the ones out there first. And at the same time, they want to be right next to our customers' success. So when they're successful, we're successful. And I think that separates, us from the pack immediately. And that's why we win most of the awards, if not all of them. And we also are winning all the culture awards. And so that's something that we're equally proud of. I think when you and I were chatting last month, I was talking about my wall of all our accolades that we've won, like being on Inc. 500, super cool. One of the fastest growing companies in the world. Amazing. We've now done that multiple years in a row, and we've got Deloitte and Fortune and all those cool things. We've also won all the product awards. That's super cool too. It's like best PMS, best hotel management suite, all that stuff is super fun. The ones that get me every single time is best places to work. That's the one that I wake up every single day motivated to try to do my best. And I think Rich shares the same thing as a co-founder and every senior leader. Those are the ones that we want, because that means we're doing something right. We are creating those environments that make people happy, healthy, and successful. And the rest comes with that. And so that's our MO, and we're going to stick to it.
Love it. Let's talk a little bit about the logistics of having a gigantic team across the entire world.
Yep.
How are you managing communication, team calls, all hands, and the trickling down of information from up top?
Yeah, so we subscribe by, and we're again, this is another, communication is critical, right? For any company for that matter. I just gave a presentation on remote work to, I think, 180 CEOs of startups at various different stages. And my first slide was, I Googled the best tips for a remote company. And there's 9.1 million search results. And the first 10 pages were basically the same 5 tips over and over again, different magazines from Fortune to Inc. to HBS, et cetera. They were all the same. And the funny thing is, those 5 tips were the exact same 5 tips you should be doing for a company that's all located in one place. It just cracked me up immediately. And so what we've realized is transparency, communication is absolutely critical. It also dilutes itself as you go down. So if I say something to our leadership team and they turn around and go tell their teams, and then so on and so on, it's like a 50% reduction in understanding or comprehension. It just gets watered down over time. And so we have to solve for that. So Rich and I do town halls frequently. Those town halls are live. We do 2 different time zone. We manage it for 2 different time zones. So one's early in the morning and then one's late at night. And that way Asia can be part of it, and Europe can not have to wake or stay up super late, and then we do the opposite. Those are fully based on vote. So questions get posted into a software. People vote up what they want answered, and as a community, Rich and I do not know what those questions are going to be, and we
Okay.
answer pretty much everything. And no one's allowed to ask an anonymous question. They have to type in their name, and that way we understand the intent behind it and who it came from. It's a trust building exercise between leaders and staff members. I want them to criticize us if needed. I want them to ask us the tough questions. So we also do company wides, and those company wides are more about alignment. So that's where we're presenting on topics, we're talking about goals or milestones or celebratory. Like I just did a company wide, and I gave a shout out to 92 people who just were promoted in the last 6 months at CloudBeds, right? That's really just a celebration for their success. It also gave them a moment of spotlight. And so we let various team members come and present. So each department will talk about some themes that they're working on. And as a result of that, they tend to bring in their team members too, so it gives visibility, or what we call presence, which is one of our core values, and gives people opportunities to talk to the whole company. We use Slack profusely. It sometimes becomes over slacky inside the organization, lots of channels. We're now having to start to police that a little bit to slow it down. I think we have 13,000 channels, and I couldn't tell you more than 100 of them are the ones I might jump in and out of occasionally, but for the most part, there's a lot of Slack noise. And we're trying to think of creative ways to create lots of channels, but also do it for the right reason, not the wrong reason. We do not require mandatory software for any department. So if someone wants to use Rike as their task management software for the marketing team, cool, great. If Confluence is the tool that the engineers and product team works, awesome. If finance wants to use something else, we don't care. The purposes of trying to get everyone organized into one platform is nearly impossible. It just doesn't work. Everyone works differently. And the reality is, I hate those project management softwares. It just doesn't work for my brain. It doesn't work for Rich's brain either. We are organized and do our way. And so I want to be mindful of how every other person operates. And so we'd rather them just have tools that make them more successful instead of trying to mandate it. But for us, it's a lot of Zoom, a lot of Slack, a lot of asynchronous docs through Google Suite, and it works for us. Is it perfect? No, that's a challenge that will wait the next chapter. And when we did our Series D announcement and our all hands, I talked about the 9 years of success that we had earned was a culmination event with the Series D. And now we have a new chapter to go right, because we're going to go double, triple the organization, not only in revenue, but also scale of complexity with people, which means we have all these blank pages. And so what we did before doesn't necessarily translate to what we do in the future. And so we just have to all be willing to accept change, because transitions are going to happen. And that's for the best. We will fuck it up too along the way. But we will do our best to avoid those mistakes. But I think it's a super exciting time for us, and the company's got a lot of momentum, and we're constantly looking for awesome people to join our team. So I highly recommend them to go check out our career page.
Yeah. So if anybody listening to this is looking for a job with an amazing company, go check out Cloudbeds. Adam, this has been very enlightening. I loved this conversation. You make me excited to scale my team to a big one, but it seems like step by step and lots of experiments, and you have to be able to accept that we're going to be making mistakes along the way. Thank you so much for joining me today. Where's the best place if people want to talk to you more, connect with you? Where's the best place for them to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. It's one of those areas that I tend to read and learn and watch what others are doing that are way more successful and way more influential in the world than I. But yeah, if anyone wants to drop me a note on LinkedIn, I do police it pretty well. Otherwise, you can always reach out to the company, and if it goes to our media team, they'll get me in touch with those people. Yeah.
All right. And for whoever was watching or listening to this episode, and if you liked it, please leave a comment. Let us know you've been checking it out. Share it with a friend or colleague, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you again, Adam, and we'll see you all next time.